Clara stood in her sunlit studio, a brush held delicately between her fingers, the smell of paint and turpentine filling the air. Her eyes scanned the canvas before her, a landscape coming to life under her touch. It was a moment of peace, one she cherished, knowing that every brushstroke was a reflection of her soul. But that serenity shattered one evening as she drove home from a successful gallery show. The rain fell in torrents, blurring the windshield. A flash of headlights, the screech of tires, and everything went black. When she woke in the hospital, her world had changed. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. The impact damaged the optic nerves. I'm afraid the vision loss is permanent. The weight of those words crushed her. Clara, the artist who had lived her life through colors and light, was now surrounded by nothing but darkness. Raphael, her old mentor, came to visit her, but she could barely muster the strength to speak. How could she ever paint again? The days blurred together. Friends and family came and went, offering empty words of comfort. But the only thing Clara could focus on was the overwhelming emptiness. Sophia, her closest friend, sat by her side more often than anyone else. "You'll find a way," she whispered, but Clara couldn't believe it. What way could there possibly be? One evening, after weeks of lying in bed, Clara finally broke down. She screamed, cried, and threw everything she could reach. "I'm useless," she shouted. "How can I paint when I can't even see?" But in the midst of her rage, something within her shifted, a flicker of defiance. If she couldn't see the world, maybe she could find a way to feel it. Perhaps her art wasn't lost, just transformed. She didn't know how yet, but she wasn't ready to give up. Weeks later, Clara returned to her studio. It was the first time since the accident. The familiar smell of paint greeted her, but the silence of the room felt heavier, without the vibrant colors she once relied on. She fumbled around, her hands tracing the surfaces she had memorized over years. She found her brushes, the palette she used, and the blank canvas standing in front of her. But there was no light, no color, just darkness. Clara felt her way to a chair and sat, breathing deeply. The world was silent, and her thoughts swirled in frustration. "What am I doing here?" she muttered under her breath. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Raphael entered quietly. "I thought I might find you here," he said softly. He sat beside her, not pushing her to speak. After a few moments, he broke the silence. "You know, art isn't just about sight. It's about feeling. Maybe you've lost one sense, but you still have your hands, your heart." Clara sighed, her fingers gripping her paintbrush. "But how? I don't know how to paint without seeing." Raphael smiled gently. "What if you didn't need to see it? What if you could feel the art? Close your eyes and just let your hands guide you. Let go of what you used to rely on." The thought seemed impossible, but as the days passed, Raphael's words echoed in her mind. Slowly, she began experimenting. At first, she hesitated, her hands unsure of themselves. The brush moved clumsily across the canvas, the textures unfamiliar. But over time, something remarkable happened. Clara began to paint again, not with her eyes, but with her emotions, her memories, and her hands. She found that the world she couldn't see had its own rhythm. The swirls of the brush against the canvas created a new kind of beauty, one born from within. She poured her pain, her frustration, and her hopes into every stroke. Each piece was raw, unrefined, but it felt alive in a way her previous works never had. Sophia visited often, marveling at Clara's progress. "These are incredible," she said one afternoon, running her fingers along the ridges of one of Clara's latest works. "They're so emotional." Clara smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "They're what I feel now. I can't see the world, but I can still experience it." Raphael returned regularly to guide Clara through this new phase of her artistic journey. His patience was endless, always encouraging her to dig deeper, to express herself fully through the tactile sensations of her work. One day, he brought with him a small, delicate sculpture. He placed it in Clara's hands and told her to explore it. "Feel the curves, the details," he instructed. This was created by someone who was also blind, but they didn't need to see. They understood the world through touch, just as you're learning to do. Clara's fingers traced the lines of the sculpture. It was intricate, but she could sense the intention behind every curve, every indentation. "It's beautiful," she whispered, almost in awe. "You see, there are different ways to experience beauty, Clara. Your hands are as much a tool as your eyes ever were. You're creating something entirely new." Inspired, Clara began incorporating texture into her paintings, using materials like sand and thick layers of paint to build pieces that could be felt as much as seen. Raphael encouraged her to experiment with techniques she had never tried before, pushing her beyond her comfort zone. But not every day was easy. There were moments of intense frustration when the brush felt foreign in her hand, when the canvas refused to cooperate, and Clara's patience wore thin. In those moments, doubt would creep in, and she would question whether this new path was worth pursuing. "What if I never feel the same connection to my art?" she asked Raphael one afternoon, exasperated after a particularly challenging session. Raphael placed a hand on her shoulder. "You won't," he said calmly. "But that's not a bad thing. You're evolving. Your connection to your art is changing, just like you are. What you're creating now has a different kind of depth, one that comes from a place of survival, of growth." His words settled over her like a balm. Clara realized that this was more than just a new way of painting. This was her way of rediscovering who she was, beyond the loss of her sight. She wasn't just learning to paint again, she was learning to live again. Months later, Clara received an invitation to participate in a local exhibition for emerging artists. Sophia had submitted some of Clara's new works without telling her, hoping it would reignite her confidence. When Clara found out, her initial reaction was fear of judgment, of failure, of revealing this new, vulnerable part of herself to the world. But with Raphael and Sophia's encouragement, Clara agreed to showcase her work. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery was buzzing with anticipation. Clara, though still unable to see, could feel the energy in the room. The space was filled with her pieces, abstract, textured works that captured the emotional journey she had been on since the accident. Visitors marveled at the uniqueness of each painting, some running their hands along the surfaces to feel the textures, while others simply stood in silence, absorbing the depth of emotion. Sophia stood by Clara's side, describing the reactions of those in the room. "People are moved," she whispered. "They're really feeling it." Clara took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She had poured her soul into these pieces, and now they were out in the world, exposed for everyone to see. As the evening progressed, Raphael approached her with a proud smile. "You did it," he said softly. Clara nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I didn't think I could, but now it feels right." A man approached, someone Clara didn't know, but he seemed deeply moved by her work. "Your paintings, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. How did you manage to create something so powerful?" Clara hesitated, then answered with quiet confidence. "I stopped trying to see the world and started feeling it instead." The exhibition was a success, but more importantly, it was a turning point for Clara. She realized that her art had evolved into something far beyond what she had imagined. Her journey through darkness had led her to a new kind of light, one that wasn't reliant on sight, but on feeling, intuition, and raw emotion. Months passed, and Clara continued to paint, each piece a testament to her resilience. She no longer feared the darkness. It had become her muse, her guide. With Raphael and Sophia by her side, Clara embraced this new chapter of her life, one where the absence of sight didn't mean the absence of beauty. She had learned to create, not from what she saw, but from what she felt deep within. And in doing so, Clara found a new kind of vision, one that illuminated,